The reason you keep hitting the same invisible wall in life isn't a failure of effort. It's a problem with the default programming in your head. We'll show you the 3-step psychological system to update the mental software running your behavior.
So, today we are doing a deep dive into a really powerful framework called Internal Schema Upgrades. Now, the core idea here is simple, but it's also pretty profound. If you want to permanently change your behavior, you don't need more willpower, you need better software. That default programming we just mentioned, well, that's just the technical term for your subconscious belief system. And this whole explainer is about how you can take manual control of your own psychological code. So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we're going to define that invisible wall you keep running into. Then, we'll diagnose your default programming to find the actual root of the problem. After that, we'll introduce the upgrade system, the framework for real change, and cover the science of why it works so darn well. Then we get super practical with your 3-step protocol before we wrap up with how to truly master your mental software. You ready to start the upgrade? Let's go.
Okay, so what is this invisible wall? You know what I'm talking about. It's that incredibly frustrating feeling when you put in maximum effort at work, with your habits, in your relationships, and somehow you get the exact same disappointing result. It is the paradox at the heart of so many of our failed goals. And here's why it happens. All your hard work is pretty much guaranteed to fail if it directly conflicts with your brain's deep-seated mental programming. You're basically trying to run brand new, sophisticated software on an old, outdated operating system. It's not compatible. And the system is always going to crash.
So let's move on to the diagnosis. It is absolutely crucial to understand that this is not a personal failing. It is not a lack of character. This is a technical problem. The issue isn't a lack of discipline. It's a bug in your cognitive code, a piece of default programming that's just running automatically in the background, sabotaging your best intentions. So, what do psychologists actually call this programming?
Well, it's called a schema. A schema is an ingrained mental model, a core belief about yourself or the world that dictates your automatic behavior. You can think of it like a rule book your brain follows without you even having to think about it. And these rules, they were often written years and years ago, maybe in your childhood, maybe from some painful failure. And they've just been running on a loop ever since, becoming so automatic that they are basically invisible to you.
And that right there is the key. A schema is the hidden rule running your life. Because it operates at a subconscious level, it doesn't feel like a belief, it feels like reality. It's the invisible logic that explains why you procrastinate or why you avoid conflict or why you self-sabotage right before a huge breakthrough. It's really like the director behind the curtain pulling all the strings on your actions.
Now, this is a perfect illustration of that internal conflict. On the left, you've got your conscious goal, your desired action. I want to be consistent, right? You buy the planners, you set the alarms, you have all the best intentions. But on the right, you've got that hidden schema rule running in the background. I only work when I feel inspired. Now, in any battle between a conscious desire and a subconscious schema, guess which one wins? The schema, 9 times out of 10. And why? Because it's automated. It's an energy-saving shortcut for your brain, so it requires 0 effort to follow that old limiting rule.
And this outdated programming, it has some serious consequences that keep you stuck. First up is cognitive rigidity. This is when you just can't adapt your beliefs, even when you're staring at overwhelming new evidence. Then, confirmation bias kicks in. Your brain actively starts looking for information that proves your limiting schema is true, while conveniently ignoring all the evidence that proves it's false. And finally, you get emotional reactivity. When that hidden rule gets challenged, your brain's fear center, the amygdala, can just light up, triggering a defensive, fear-based response to protect that old belief. It's your brain's ancient alarm system just trying to keep you safe in a familiar pattern, even if that pattern is holding you back.
So that's the problem. It's systemic, it's a bug in the code. But the good news is the solution is just as systemic. We're not talking about cheesy affirmations or just trying harder. We are talking about a clear, precise, and structured system for literally rewriting these mental rules. Think of it like an engineering approach to your own personal growth. The system has 3 distinct phases. Phase 1 is the Schema Audit. Here, you get to be a detective. You identify a hidden rule that's causing a recurring failure, and you externalize it, you write it down. Just doing that transforms it from an undeniable fact into a testable hypothesis. Phase 2 is Controlled Disconfirmation. Now you become a scientist. You design these small, safe, behavioral experiments with one single goal, to scientifically disprove the old rule. And then Phase 3 is the behavioral anchor, Once you've broken the old rule with actual evidence, you create a new, empowering one and you install it, using a specific technique to make it automatic. But why does this system actually work so reliably? Let's get into the science of the change. This isn't just some clever idea. It's a system built on the fundamental principles of how the human brain actually rewires itself. We're basically leveraging the brain's own mechanics to our advantage, forcing an upgrade from the inside out. So, why is this system so much more effective than just trying harder? Why does it create permanent change where sheer willpower just fails? The answer lies in a really powerful psychological state that this system is specifically designed to create.
And that state is called cognitive dissonance. It's that mental static, that psychological discomfort you feel when your actions contradict your beliefs. For example, believing I'm not a public speaker, but then you successfully ask a question in a meeting. Your brain absolutely hates this conflict. It is hardwired to resolve it one way or another. The Schema Upgrade system doesn't try to avoid this discomfort, it engineers it in a very controlled way to force a change in your belief.
And this breaks down the three core mechanisms at play here beautifully. First, creating that dissonance triggers neuroplasticity. The brain is forced to weaken the old neural pathway tied to that limiting belief and start building a new one based on your new behavior. Second, it systematically overrides confirmation bias. By feeding your brain small, irrefutable pieces of new evidence that you can do the thing you thought you couldn't, you force it to accept a new reality. Finally, and this is the real game changer, it conserves willpower. Once the new schema is installed, the desired behavior becomes automatic. It just aligns with your self-image, making it feel easy and natural, which frees up all that precious mental energy for other things.
All right, that's enough theory. Let's get into the practical side. How do you actually put this to work right now? We're going to walk through a direct, actionable protocol that you can use the minute this explainer is over. This is where the knowledge becomes a real skill.
This is your 10-minute protocol. It is designed to be super simple and fast. Step 1, the schema audit. Just grab a pen and paper. Identify one area where you always seem to get stuck, and write down the negative rule that you think is causing it. Something like, I have to be perfect before I can start. Step 2, the disconfirmation test. Design one tiny, low-risk action that directly violates that rule. Make it so small it almost feels ridiculous. And Step 3, install an anchor. Write down your new, empowering rule and create a simple if-then plan to put it into action.
And here are some fantastic, concrete examples. Look at that first one. If your old rule is, I must be perfect to start, your test is, to work on the project for 5 minutes badly. See, the goal isn't progress. The goal is to generate evidence that proves the rule is false. If your rule is, I quit if I don't see results, your test is to do the task for 3 minutes and actively ignore the results. Your only job is to follow the process, breaking that addiction to immediate feedback. Or maybe, I can't speak up in meetings. The test? Ask one clarifying question. It's not about giving a brilliant speech, it's just about breaking the pattern of silence with one manageable action.
Okay, now for the final critical piece, anchoring the new rule. You do this with something that psychologists call an implementation intention. It sounds fancy, but it's just a simple if-then plan. You pre-decide how you're going to respond to a specific trigger. For example, if I open my laptop to work on the project, then I will immediately work for just 5 minutes. This simple script automates your new behavior. It removes the need for in-the-moment decision-making and willpower. You're giving your brain a new, preloaded command to follow. It's that simple.
Okay, let's zoom out and land this plane. We've gone through the problem, the system, the science, and the protocol. Now let's distill all of this down to the core philosophy, the single most important idea from this entire framework.
And here it is. This is the paradigm shift. Your life is constrained not by your external environment, but by the rigidity of your internal software. So stop trying to force change with brute effort. Start engineering your core beliefs. Because when you upgrade your internal operating system, your external reality has no choice but to change right along with it.
So here is your mandate. Your mission is to turn this knowledge into action. Don't just think about it, do it. Audit and disprove one limiting schema tomorrow. Pick one small, invisible wall and just run a tiny experiment to prove to yourself that it's not nearly as solid as you think it is. This is how you unlock your capacity for real, fundamental, lasting change.
So, I'll leave you with this question. What is the one invisible wall you will choose to break through? Just remember, internal schema upgrades solve the problem of systemic behavioral rigidity and self-sabotage. And what really matters here is that this gives you a systematic way to activate neuroplasticity and achieve self-consistency. The framework, the disconfirmation test, and the new rule formulation, it works because it directly resolves cognitive dissonance, and it overrides that confirmation bias that's been keeping you stuck. And here's the most empowering part. Productivity isn't about doing more. It's about mastering systems that make focus effortless.